All right, guys, I just wanted to see if anybody else had any kind of the same understanding in terms of what I have, and if this might help anybody who's been a little bit stumped on a lot of this stuff. So here we are, right? So let there be the light. You are the light of the world. Boom, spark happens. In the instantaneous moment that spark's there, there's actually no rays coming off of it. In that only the instantaneous moment in which it happens, right? The absolute second that light then is, the moment it is, it's going to have infinite rays that come outside of that ray, or outside of that point, right? So out comes the infinite rays. Now, each one of us is one of those rays. It's the observer. It's the eye, all-seeing eye, the eye in the back of the head, the observer that's way, way back there behind everything. That is technically a light ray coming from the spiritual sun that began everything. That spiritual sun, as a lot of people know, is either Eros or Christ or Osiris or whatever, or Apollo. It's the spiritual sun. It is the light of the world. It is what's giving the physical world its light through the spiritual aspect, but it is what animates everything. It is the spirit. It is the logos. It is the Christ. Whatever word you want to give it, I think it's the Aklavite Shavara is the word in the Eastern religions. So just, it doesn't really matter from that perspective as long as you understand that we are each our own ray, right? Our own unique ray coming from the infinite sun. Now, when that goes through, it goes through different layers, sheath, spheres, whatever you want to call it, spindles, cradles. There's a lot of different ways that it's been described over the years. But what it does is it goes through each one and it layers it on. Because you got to realize our spirit, which is our monad, our ray, it's unconditioned, it's formless, it's a blank slate. It doesn't have a script to go by. It can go by any script, technically, right? It's just not awake enough to go by any script on its own. It needs to be awakened in order to be able to be in control and be a full creator and to be able to control the script it obeys and expresses through on its own. It can express through whatever it wants to express through. It just doesn't know how because it's not awake. And what it does is it goes through and it puts on all of these bodies, and the bodies keep getting layered on and layered on and layered on until eventually we get into the kingdom of Malkut, sorry. And that's our physical sheath. And all of these are merely layers. If you've been meditating or have observation techniques and things of that nature, you're going to recognize that you are none of these things. You are not the thoughts that come up in the mental realm. You are not the feelings that pop up in the astral. You are not the stuff from your karmic past or whatever. You're not even the higher self that's giving you cues and things of that nature. You know what I mean? So the lower self is down here. Higher self is down here. Up here. And then, but you're that ray. You're the spirit. You're the formless nothingness that's like giving animation to absolutely everything. And so when we realize this, everything in this divine matrix is animated by the spirit. Everything has that divine spark. Every atom, every molecule, every plant, every animal, every human, every bit of life, if it is animated in any way, not if it's organic, if it is animated, that means that spark, that light, that from that ray, from that point, is expressing and animating through that. And each one of those rays is a subjective spiritual entity. A spiritual entity with a subjective first-person experience, essentially. And everything in this divine matrix that is animated has a different experience, but is still the same essence, just with a different script, with different forms, with different things that it's programmed through. And when it goes through each layer, it experiences reality in a different manner because it's now putting on a different vehicle, a different thing. But it is not a vehicle itself. Our spirit, us, we're not a vehicle. We need a vehicle in order to express. And it's not a problem to express in these vehicles. The problem is these vehicles express us. They possess us. Essentially, our mental patterns, our emotional patterns, our karmic patterns, all of these things, they possess us. They control us. They guide our lives mechanically and like a lunar nature. We pretty much obey it almost all the time, very seldomly, unless moments of extreme willpower, of breaking bad habits. And, unless we're basically extending willpower to either build new habits, break old habits, or something to that degree to like make a decision. Other than that, we are asleep throughout the whole day, and our essence is being piloted by all of the bodies in which that we have in our aggregates. All of these are aggregates. They're all just a network of different layered bodies that we all have. Everybody always thinks that the inner bodies are them, and that Malkuth is the only thing, is the only thing that they're seeing outside. But in reality, you can start to observe the inner world and see that inner space and realize that there's all these other bodies there. And that's what Buddha talked about, right? But where things get really interesting is when you go down to here. Each one of these sheaths, like I said, it's like a circle within a circle. It's a sphere within a sphere. And when you get to right here, what's crazy about this is if you know how light works in terms of physics, when light goes off of here and it hits the lens, it's going to bend around the lens, and a lot of that light gets lost going around. Sure, a good portion of the light will get through, but it will be diffused an incredible amount. And all of that light then bounces, all of this light right here, all of that light that bounces off, that, if you look down here, like when it's bounced, like once it's like past to here, when it goes to here, it's going to then get sucked in to the sphere in which it bounced into. And so up here, for instance, right, when it goes into the 10th sphere, it bounces out, and there's no spheres, there's no vessels, there's nothing to actually contain the light once it bounces out. That, from Kabbalistic perspective, is what creates the material world and what created evil, which was all by design because it gave us free choice. By now getting to actually pick and choose rather than being forced into good, we get to choose to do good, which is what real good is the choice to do it rather than the forced application of it, right? But once we go into here and we've broken through, a lot of the light is lost before it even breaks through into this first sphere of Kether. Once it's into the light, into the sphere of Kether, it then goes into Hokmah. And once it goes into Hokmah, then a lot of this light that pierces into here bounces out. And what it does is it comes into here and it just fills this void. All this light that got lost, it attempted to break through, but it got diffused. And we know, like I said, from a physics perspective, it does that. But from an internal metaphysical perspective, it's because the light that went through did not express in the form of its creator. When it goes through a layer, this is a new layer of form. When it does not pierce through, it is because it is not in the same form or the same traits or characteristics. It is not essentially Christ-like. And because it's not Christ-like, when it passed through this, to whatever degree it wasn't Christ-like when it passed through that form, it loses light and it nestles into that sphere. And then it does it again, and it nestles into that sphere. And some of these might be, like I said, at some point, vices. Like you might have a vice that is what triggers, like where the light tried to express through freely, but because a vice or something like that made you do something bad, that light gets lost. That vice, which is not how the original would have expressed, ends up getting lost because a pattern within this expression decides to hijack you or possess you and hijack the light and got it trapped over here. And then that keeps happening until all of a sudden every single one of these is filled. Well, if any of you are familiar with what this represents, these are the 9 layers of hell. Each one of these is the layers of hell that are within us. And this would then be on each one of these that's coming out here. Each one of those. That is going to actually be the light that is trapped within each layer of our own hell, which is why with Dante's Inferno or with the allegory of Jesus Christ, with having to go into the depths of hell to free the light, the trapped spirits within hell itself in order to ascend. We have to do the exact same thing. Christ in us has to trigger our so the Christ in us is literally like going to be one of the earliest impulses. The Christ impulse is going to be one of the very earliest scripts that we get when we accept Christ in the sense of wanting to, seek so you will find and knock and it will be answered, right? As soon as you really truly want that, this like impulse triggers way down here, and then all of a sudden your overall user interface that has all of these triggers with your emotions, your physical stimuli, your mental stimuli, your emotional stimuli, your karmic stimuli, with all your higher mind stimuli, with all of that stimuli like there, you get an increased stimuli or an additional stimuli of the Christ impulse. Once that Christ impulse is actually there, you then start to have like that guiding light, that basically that like hand holding thing, where as long as you are focusing on your inner world, your inner guru, your inner master, that Christ impulse that triggers way down there, that will be guiding you. That will literally, like, you don't have to listen to anybody in the physical world. You just need to follow the inner prompts on the inner interface, not the outer interface. Everybody's looking in the outer interface here to be able to actually find the answers. But then you have no idea. But the thing is, this impulse way down here, it knows. It has an idea. Not an idea. It knows the idea. Like, it knows the answer. And so it's going to feed you prompts, synchronicities. It's going to feed you breadcrumbs. It's going to give you impulses. It's going to make you feel strongly about wanting to do something in a certain situation. And that wanting to do something strongly is going to tug you like a magnet towards something you want to do. But the only trick is you need to learn to follow that impulse. When you follow that impulse and not all the other ones, which you can only do by knowing yourself, which is why the Oracle at Delphi decided to put that up on their on the walls of the front of their temple, to know thyself, because that's the most important thing possible. And so, like, going back to this, each light, like, so as the light goes in, it's going to end up triggering into that. It's going to disperse, and then it's going to get caught in the vessel. But also, as it continues to go through, the opposite side is like a receptacle that's going to just hold it. And then since this is an entire sphere, like we notice over here, it's just going to fill the entire sphere. And like I said, it's a sphere within a sphere, not a circle within a circle. So you got to realize, it's like Earth within Earth, or, like whatever the case. And that technically it's going to be like an outer crust layer or whatever. And that outer crust layer, that is a layer of hell. And each layer of hell is there. And this is like in us, like this is our own inner world. Like within us, we have our own light that tried to express through this system in the way that the divine would have. But because the divine tried to express and got caught up in all this nonsense and then didn't express the way it wanted to originally, all this light gets lost. And then you have to literally go down to the depths of hell. You got to go as far down as you go. You can get that much light and you can go back up. And everybody knows that you can only go up to heaven as far as you've gone down into hell. And so you got to go down to hell, get the light out of there. And how do you get the light out of there? You purge all the defects that caused that to happen in the first place. If you're a murderer and there's a lot of light down in one of those hells because you killed somebody, well, you need to literally purge the psychological defect in the psychology, in the psyche, in the soul, in the inner world. In that area, you need to purge that. And when you purge that, you release the light that was trapped within it. But that's only done through inner purification, through purifying your character. So you literally, you have to do this inner work, which is why faith without works is dead. And like, I don't know, there's a whole lot more than this, but I just thought that the whole, this was pretty, a good breakthrough for me in terms of with Kaballah. I've been into it for quite a bit, but my visualization with the idea of how light actually works and the fact that the light going through the spheres. The other day I had lessons where they described it as lenses. And when I was with a friend, and I had mentioned it as the idea of a lens, he, who's been in actual physics and stuff like that, very, very deep, was talking about how light interacts with lenses and things of that nature. And then we started thinking and getting way in depth. And the next thing you know, I'm coming up with basically, the Prima Mobile, which is, already thought of thousands of years ago. And I'm not saying like my being my sheath thought of it, but my interface has given me the realization, and my being, which is speaking right now, has realized through all of the script in which that I've gone through that holy shit, this shit's been right here and it's been so deep and it's multidimensional. Everybody thinks that it's like, oh, the physical earth and then the physical planets, and like, nope, it's not that at all. It's the physical plane and then the planes that are subtle planes within us, and each one of those is governed by an Archon, which are called the Elohim, which are the gods of form, and gods of form because they are basically responsible for the scripts that we're allowed to pilot form-wise. They give us all the forms, and then we're the ones who selectively choose to pilot what forms. However, we have been asleep and having the forms pilot us rather than us piloting the forms. And so really the idea is we just got to become a creator again and, pilot ourselves, I guess. All right. Peace out, guys.